Hello, dear viewers, and welcome back to the channel, where we dissect the most compelling and often troubling stories emanating from the world of the British monarchy. Today, we delve into a tempest brewing around the former Duchess of York, Sarah Ferguson, a figure perpetually navigating the treacherous waters of royal scandal and public opinion. The Duchess has once again found herself squarely in the crosshairs of intense scrutiny, facing a powerful and absolutely scathing critique that cuts right to the heart of her perceived motives and past financial dealings. This is a story of loyalty, necessity, and the brutal reckoning that comes when one tries to disentangle themselves from a massive royal liability. Before we unpack this complex situation, which touches upon everything from publishing deals to infamous emails, do remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support ensures we can continue to bring you these detailed, deep dive analyses of the royal landscape. The immediate backdrop to this controversy is, of course, the seismic shift that occurred following her ex-husband, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, being definitively stripped of his royal titles and military affiliations. For years, the living arrangements and public appearances of Sarah Ferguson, or Fergie as she is often known, and Prince Andrew had been unique, perhaps even baffling, to outside observers. They maintained a remarkably close relationship, famously sharing the sprawling Royal Lodge estate long after their official divorce. However, the consequences of Prince Andrew's fall from grace were monumental, creating an impossible situation for those still linked to him. It is against this highly sensitive backdrop that the renowned GB News journalist Susan Holder launched a truly blistering public attack on the Duchess of York, questioning the timing and integrity of her recent actions and decisions. Speaking on GB News, Susan Holder did not mince words. Her critique centered not just on the present moment, but on a long-standing pattern of behavior that she believes speaks volumes about Sarah Ferguson's priorities. The journalist suggested that the Duchess's actions, particularly her attempt to distance herself from Prince Andrew now, were driven by purely self-serving financial anxieties. Holder put forward a very direct motive for Sarah's sudden public maneuvering: the protection of her commercial enterprises. She speculated aloud, suggesting that the Duchess was perhaps deeply concerned about the potential jeopardy to her lucrative commercial ventures, specifically her publishing career. Perhaps she was worried about losing her publishing deal and needed her children's books to come out, Holder observed, drawing a direct line between the royal scandal and the sanctity of Ferguson's career. The implication here is stark, that the preservation of her personal brand and income stream took precedence over steadfast loyalty or genuine moral reflection. Holder then delivered the most stinging adjective of the entire segment, a word that immediately captured headlines and summarized the journalist's low opinion of the Duchess's recent conduct. She stated emphatically, "The word grubby is what comes to mind." To call an action grubby in this context suggests something sordid, disreputable, and morally questionable, a move made out of desperation or crass self-interest rather than principle. This single word encapsulates the view that Ferguson's efforts to separate herself from Andrew's taint are less about ethical boundaries and more about securing her own financial future amidst the unfolding disaster. Susan Holder continued her relentless assessment, leveling the profound accusation that Sarah Ferguson had, for a significant period, been living off Prince Andrew, only to then execute a swift and calculated exit once the financial and reputational cost of that arrangement became too high. Holder used evocative language, suggesting the Duchess hightailed it out of there at the first sign of serious trouble. This paints a picture of opportunism and self-preservation rather than a shared, resilient front. During her appearance with GB News hosts Ann Diamond and Stephen Dixon, Holder emphasized the necessity of broadening the scope of the discussion beyond just Prince Andrew's culpability. She argued that while the focus is rightfully on Andrew, we must not ignore the uncomfortable and highly problematic history of the Duchess herself. "I think it is quite interesting to look at the Sarah Ferguson kind of line in this," Holder told the hosts. "Because we're all talking about Andrew, as we rightly should, but actually those revelations that she was begging for money from Epstein way after he was convicted, way after we all knew, had given an apology for her actions. This brings us to the most damning aspect of the journalist critique: the resurrection of Sarah Ferguson's deeply regrettable association with the convicted pedophile, Jeffrey Epstein. Holder pointed out the highly disturbing timeline, that Ferguson was allegedly soliciting financial assistance from Epstein long after his initial conviction, and crucially, long after the public was fully aware of his heinous crimes. This historical financial entanglement is crucial because it undermines any claim the Duchess might make to moral high ground or sudden ethical clarity in her current separation from Andrew. It suggests a pattern of behavior where financial expediency trumps ethical judgment. The controversy surrounding the Duchess and Epstein reached a particular peak years ago, centering on an infamous email sent in 2011. Holder directly referenced this correspondence, which has long haunted the Duchess's public image. In that email, Ferguson reportedly referred to the convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein as her supreme friend, a phrase that shocked and appalled the public given the gravity of his crimes. Holder brought this shocking detail back into the public consciousness, stating, "We've seen the email that went to Epstein saying, 'I didn't really mean it,' referring to the subsequent attempts by Ferguson to retract or mitigate the damage caused by the initial, deeply affectionate language used toward a known criminal." For Susan Holder, this combination of past financial desperation, the highly inappropriate language used toward Epstein, and the current, seemingly self-interested actions surrounding Prince Andrew's exile all coalesce into a definitive judgment on the Duchess's character. The journalist concluded her assessment by stating unequivocally that Sarah Ferguson has shown her true colors now in a way that I think is absolutely disgraceful. This is not merely a critique of a poor decision, but a condemnation of what the journalist perceives to be a fundamental lack of integrity and ethical consideration in her dealings. Holder further took aim at Ferguson's motives for finally distancing herself geographically and publicly from Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. The journalist suggested that the former Duchess only decided to vacate the shared premises at Royal Lodge once she could see which way the wind was blowing. This implies a calculated strategic retreat, a jump from a sinking ship, rather than an action taken out of genuine concern for the victims or for maintaining the standards expected of a family still loosely associated with the monarchy. The implication is clear. The motivation was not moral, but meteorological. She waited until the storm was inevitable and then acted to save herself. Now, this separation is no small matter. Sarah Ferguson is preparing to move out of Royal Lodge, a residence that has been her anchor for decades, even post-divorce. She is now tasked with carving out her own independent living arrangements, establishing a definitive boundary away from the orbit of the disgraced Duke. This physical separation is symbolically powerful, reinforcing the idea that she is trying to sever the final ties that bind her to the King's Norfolk estate, where Andrew is now expected to reside, and the wider royal infrastructure. The logistical and emotional weight of this move cannot be overstated. It marks the end of a unique, almost unprecedented arrangement between divorced royal figures. However, the emotional fallout of this public and physical separation seems to be causing significant friction within the family unit itself, specifically concerning her two daughters, Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie. A commentator noted a truly interesting and complex dynamic unfolding within the family. It appears that Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie are exhibiting signs of being more mad with her than Andrew. This observation sheds light on a classic and deeply painful family dynamic that often plays out when one parent becomes a chronic liability. The commentator pointed out that in such scenarios, there is often one sibling or group of siblings who are seen as the liability. In this case, perhaps the combination of their parents' constant scandals. Then there is the other sibling, or the children collectively, who are tasked with the unenviable and exhausting job of keeping the liable parent in check and holding them to higher standards. The daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, have long been lauded for their quiet dignity, resilience, and their ability to forge respectable private lives, despite the constant public scrutiny faced by their parents. They have worked tirelessly to maintain their own reputations and professional standing, often acting as the unofficial cleanup crew for their parents' repeated missteps. When a parent, particularly a mother, continues to make decisions that threaten the stability and reputation that the children have fought so hard to build, the frustration can boil over. The commentator captured this feeling perfectly, stating, "You almost get annoyed." This annoyance stems from the burden of having to constantly manage the fallout. It is the frustration of the responsible party watching the irresponsible party continually undermine the collective effort. While Andrew's actions are undoubtedly catastrophic, his situation is now fixed. He is exiled. Sarah Ferguson's continued perceived self-interest and the resurfacing of the Epstein scandal, however, represent a fresh, avoidable wave of negative publicity that Beatrice and Eugenie must now absorb and navigate. The princesses are likely wrestling with the cognitive dissonance of loving their mother while simultaneously being exasperated by her choices, which seem to prioritize short-term financial gain over long-term familial peace and public standing. They are the ones who must face the familial eye rolls of epic proportions from the wider establishment and the public whenever their mother's name is linked to another controversy. The implication of Susan Holder's critique, coupled with the reported anger from her daughters, suggests that Sarah Ferguson is now facing a profound moment of isolation. She is losing her physical home at Royal Lodge. She is facing a renewed barrage of criticism regarding her past financial decisions. And, perhaps most painfully, she risks alienating the two people who have consistently stood by her side throughout her turbulent royal journey. Her efforts to secure a publishing deal and maintain her commercial viability are understandable in the context of needing a steady income stream. But the apparent calculation behind her separation from Andrew has been interpreted by critics like Holder as deeply cynical and lacking in genuine remorse or ethical depth. The Duchess of York has always been a survivor, known for her ability to bounce back from controversy. However, the current situation presents a unique confluence of challenges: the definitive closure of the Andrew chapter, the renewed spotlight on her Epstein connection, and the reported disappointment of her own children. As Sarah Ferguson prepares to establish her new life, away from the familiar comfort and protection of Royal Lodge and the immediate vicinity of the royal court, she must confront the reality that her true colors, as Susan Holder put it, are being scrutinized intensely. The public and, seemingly, her daughters are demanding a level of accountability and integrity that they feel has long been absent from her actions. This event certainly gives us much to reflect upon regarding the intersection of celebrity, financial desperation, and the enduring standards expected even of former members of the extended royal family. The story of Sarah Ferguson serves as a powerful reminder that the ghosts of past financial indiscretions have a long, painful shelf life, especially when they involve figures as notorious as Jeffrey Epstein. What are your thoughts on this complex web of loyalty and self-interest? Do you agree with Susan Holder's assessment that Sarah Ferguson's actions are grubby, or do you believe she is simply acting in the best interest of her own survival? Please share your opinions and insights in the comments section below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more detailed royal analyses, and join us for our next celebrity update, where we continue to track the unfolding drama of the world's most famous families. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.